I'm pleased to introduce Peter Macy, the founder and CEO of ROCKBlue, an international company that he's going to introduce you to. Peter, for people who don't know about you or ROCKBlue, would you give us the 2-minute overview?
Okay, thanks, Joe. How would I describe ROCKBlue in 2 minutes? Well, the core purpose of ROCKBlue is to make a dramatic contribution to UN Sustainable Development Goal 6, SDG 6, specifically improving the lives of the urban poor in the developing world by supplying water and sanitation for all. In general terms, we partner with utilities by being a mentor and a connector. And as a mentor, our roster of over 110 specialists offer management expertise in now 21 different categories. So the utilities can achieve greater efficiencies and increase capabilities in their operations with that help. Utility management is sometimes unfairly expected to know all the areas of operations. When and where there are gaps in their capabilities, we have the expertise to ensure they are filled. Our services are free to the utilities and have no end date. That is, we're committed to assisting them largely virtually as long as they need us. The relationship will continue until the utility has become self-reliant. We also serve as connectors, connecting our partners with important resources such as donors, lenders, aid agencies, and even the private sector. We do this by leveraging our team's international reputations, contacts, and experiences to provide those important connections to utility management as they work to overcome their many challenges. We're now in 5 countries, serving 7 utilities that are in 18 cities, and the populations that they serve are 4 million.
Specifically referring to the COVID-19 pandemic, what are the financial impacts you've observed with the 7 organizations you're working with at the moment?
Financial impacts. Well, for starters, the financial stability of most of the utilities in the developing world, including our partners, are fragile at best. Now, add to that the impacts of this historic pandemic, and they're really teetering on partial or complete financial crisis. Most of them, even in the early days of the pandemic, were already seeing 30 to 40% drops in revenue. That's not surprising considering their mandate to provide water regardless of whether their customers pay for that water. The forecasts, however, are for up to 70% drops in revenue. Obviously, a completely unsustainable situation. Thus, we're working with them to predict future scenarios, prepare mitigation plans, conduct rigorous financial modeling, and to immediately engage in the mitigation efforts. And those mitigation efforts are for themselves, for their governments, and for the private sector. So we're worried, but we're working with them day and night to try and get them to survive.
And what do you expect the long-term implications to be, for example, 3 to 5 years from now, for the organizations that do survive the immediate pandemic response?
That's a great question, and we're getting asked that more and more often. So the long-term predictions are that they will likely all survive, but I could be sadly mistaken. Regardless, they'll all be compromised, damaged, and weakened by this. There are many reasons for concern. A few that come to mind: loss of clients who go to alternative sources of water and sanitation, loss of trained staff due to illness, death, having to move to more stable employment, deteriorating infrastructure, impractical or inefficient emergency measures such as Bowser deliveries that don't work well for normal operations, loss of the private sector, especially if they go out of business, such as suppliers of chemicals. And then lastly is the crippling financial situation that's going to hurt them in the long run. So the emergency measures taken today have to also include minimum levels of effort to address the long-term resilience and durability of these public entities. Examples of that include training and backup staff, more secure forms of payment, such as prepaid meters, privatizing parts of the operation, and working with the regulators to increase rates. So they've got to do both. They've got to work on the emergency, and they have to work on long-term planning as well.
Peter, with respect to the COVID-19 pandemic at the moment, what effects have you already seen in terms of access to water for people, access to capital programs for cities, and what can be done to mitigate the negative impacts that you've observed?
Joe, that's a good question. You might be surprised. Existing impacts on access to water have been negligible. In fact, in some cases, access has been increased, particularly in the informal settlements with water kiosks, emergency pipeline extensions. That is, the pandemic actually elevated the urgency of these previously marginalized communities. However, they are teetering on the edge of a cliff. With all the new challenges facing them, if these are not sorted, water supplies will be impacted. And if it's not supply, it could be quality. So, for example, we are already aware of water quality issues in the countries we are working, such as typhoid. Your next question was access to capital programs. These will be constrained, and they'll be focused on emergency measures. But a number of development financial institutions, DFIs, are quite keen to assist. Their first priority will be for emergency measures and quick, low-cost measures. Their second priority will be for the emergency measures as well, but those that are longer to implement and more costly. But particularly those selling loans, they'll be interested in the large capital programs not directly related to emergency responses. What can be done to mitigate the negative impacts? I think the most important activity is to plan. Plan. Prepare emergency response plans and business continuity plans. Spend the right resources to make sure they're properly costed and get them vetted and approved by key stakeholders. Once these are in place, it's far easier for their governments and development partners to offer assistance. They must also realize that the burdens of this pandemic are beyond the capability of any utility, regardless of whether it's in the developed or developing world. They need to seek external help.
I understand. Thank you. And for my last question, this webinar is going to be watched by potentially about 800 water utility personnel from around the world. What take-home message would you like to give them? Is there anything ROCKBlue can help them with, or is there anything you would like to ask them to do for ROCKBlue?
I guess my main message is to repeat what I said earlier, Joe, and that is the message to water utility personnel and those that are working with them or supporting them is to invest the time to plan. Even as they're in the throes of this emergency, find the time to plan. Prepare your emergency response plans, your business continuity plans, prepare your budgets, have them checked carefully and have them finalized. These are your documents to survival. If you don't plan and if you don't prepare these plans, you will suffer, and so will the community you serve. And also, there are templates out there for these plans and for the financial analysis, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do something brand new. You can use some of these templates. What does ROCKBlue need? We need more resources, both in terms of people and finance, so that we can do a better job of helping the utilities that we're working with, and also to grow and work with more utilities. So if you're a utility and you're in need, please contact us at info@rockblue.org, and we'll see if we can help you. Certainly, if we can't help you, we'll put you in touch with the right people that can. That's our business. You're in for a tough road ahead, and that's our mission, is to help with that.